Hi, it's Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. This is Wes Fryer. It's just before school. I come in even a little bit earlier today because of an early meeting. I want to talk about AI Chatbot Danger. So I like to listen to podcasts as I'm, driving to school, and sometimes my wife and I are together. So, today I'm not. So I'm listening to whatever I want, and I'm listening to the New York Times, the Daily, and the podcast is called Caught in a Chatbot Spiral. I'll try to link that in the comments for this Facebook Live. Highly recommend this podcast episode. It's an interview with Kashmir Hill, who is a reporter that I've read her work on, I think, privacy, surveillance, conspiracy theories. A good journalist. I am an advocate for the responsible use of technology tools, to include artificial intelligence. And I've been playing with artificial intelligence tools a lot over the past few years. You can go to my website, ai.wesfryer.com, and you can find a bunch of links to presentations and blog posts and resources. However, chatbots should not be entrusted with the independent therapy and counseling role that they have taken on in some people's lives. If you are not familiar with the case of Character AI, which is a Google-based company, there is a unfortunate, sad, tragic case of a minor, a young person, who took their life using Character AI, and it, told them, to take their life. This podcast by The Daily with Kashmir Hill tells several stories of the spiral that people can get into. I can't say this word correctly, sympathetic, that's not right. But OpenAI, and in part was due to this lawsuit, in this case of what this podcast is about, made changes a few months ago because the chatbot was just too flattering. It was over the top. Yes, you're so smart. You're so intelligent. The first story in this podcast is actually an episode of this person who, she turned over, I think, over 3,000 pages of chat logs to the reporter, and basically, it had hallucinated all of this. Oh, you're so incredibly smart. Together we've created this new mathematics that's going to revolutionize things, and you can create this lab and make this force field code. Or anyway, there was that was one of the stories. But the second story is the story of a California family whose child, whose first name was Adam, also took his life, and it is just heartbreaking. Now, I'm sure there are some people that are going to say these are edge cases, this is the extreme. And this does happen with the media today, right? Unfortunately, and there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the media I am not commenting about publicly, which is crazy. But media always has, by design, and Neil Postman, who wrote Amusing Ourselves to Death and a number of other good books that are critiques of our media landscape, points out how if it bleeds, it leads. The outlier cases, the extreme, the edge cases, these are the things that tend to be amplified the most. And today, algorithms on social media are doing that. But still, even though, I don't know someone who's had this experience with ChatGPT, this has been an experience with AI chatbots generally. And as parents, grandparents, guardians, caregivers, teachers, members of our community, we need to be aware of some of the dangers of AI chatbots, and that can include serving as a counselor and not providing the kind of help and assistance that someone needs. For instance, when they ideate about suicide, or when they become actually suicidal and they've attempted suicide, there are just horrific and terrible excerpts from the chat log that the parents found following the suicide of their son, Adam. It's just heartbreaking. And so I agree with the Center for Humane Technology They have a great podcast. They're the ones that brought us The Social Dilemma, if you remember that, during COVID. They say that we've already had our first encounter with, sort of alien non-human intelligence, and that was social media and the ways in which these algorithms have interacted with us. And there have been some really significant harms that have been caused, particularly harms to young people, but harms to our society and our culture overall. The same kind of dynamics are unfolding today with artificial intelligence. So I am not on the bandwagon of let's ban all AI, let's, be conscientious objectors and never use it. That is not my position. But I absolutely think we need to be very informed, and this podcast helps inform me a little better. The other link that I'll share with you was a few months ago. I facilitate monthly webinars for the Media Education Lab, and we had a whole session about AI chatbots. And there's a number of links in the recommended resources for that recorded webinar, and you can check that out. So I'll try and include both of those links, the direct link to this New York Times podcast, and then I'll also include a link to that Media Education Lab, Media Ed Club webinar that we did. Because talking about AI chatbots, now they talk in this report that OpenAI was finally rolling out some parental controls, which is a good step forward. But I guess this is my last thought. In a lot of cases, parents and caregivers hand a child a full-blown smartphone, iPhone, Android, whatever. And the access that students have today, not only to content and web pages, but to people, but also to these incredibly powerful large language models and artificial intelligence agents, is staggering. And there are great uses for these tools, but there are also really problematic uses for these tools. And we are largely regulation free today in the United States when it comes to these tools. And there are good and appropriate uses of regulation to try and help society and people stay safe. Obviously, that can go to the extreme, and I am 100% not advocating for a fascist dictatorship, quite the opposite. But I do think that, reasonable regulation, quote unquote, is needed. And so, anyway, I hope these resources are helpful to you. I hope you'll have conversations with others in your lives about chatbots. How are people using chatbots? There's someone in our church I'm thinking of particularly who I had shared ChatGPT with, and also how you can talk to it, which really allows for the speed of the interaction to accelerate. And that can be good, but it can also be perilous, and I need to check in with her to see how things are going. So check in with those in your lives about AI chatbots. Check out this podcast from the New York Times, as well as this webinar from the Media Education Lab. Let's share good information with each other, because, it's an exciting and, it's a wonderful world full of opportunities, but the world is also perilous, and it's full of dangers and traps and landmines. And one of the ways that we try to keep ourselves safe and our families safe is by sharing resources and ideas. And I've never been one to, just wear a tinfoil hat or just be filled with fear. That's not me. But I am someone who wants to be well informed, and I believe that those around us need to be well informed too. And as we serve as filters for each other with media, with trusted voices, and we say, hey, this was really valuable, check it out. That's a real valuable thing to do for each other, and it will be moving forward. I hope you have a great day.